Sergeant Claire Donovan thought she had already seen everything war could throw at her. She'd survived eats that shredded Humvees like paper, night raids that ended in blood-soaked silence, and the hollow loneliness that followed every mission. After 12 years of service, her eyes carried the kind of weight that no medal could lighten. But nothing in her past prepared her for the night the desert gave her something that wasn't supposed to be. This Claire's unit had been reassigned to wildfire containment in southern Arizona. Officially, the mission was supporting civilian agencies. In truth, it was a way to keep restless soldiers busy without putting them in combat. She didn't complain. She'd rather fight fire than ghosts from overseas. That evening, smoke painted the sky a dirty orange. The blaze was tearing through dry canyon brush faster than the firemen could handle. Claire and two others stayed back to map exit routes. For evacuation, her boots crunched on brittle gravel as the heat pressed down, suffocating. That's when she heard a dot, not the crackle of burning trees, not the groan of collapsing rocks, a cry. High-pitched, fragile, like a child or something close. She stopped cold, scanning the haze. Her teammates shouted for her to keep moving, but she couldn't. Something in that sound gripped her chest like a hand. She followed it, stumbling down a slope choked with smoke, ignoring the sting in her eyes, and then she saw it. Curled at the base of a scorched boulder was a creature straight out of a fairy tale or a nightmare. It was small, no bigger than a house cat. Scales shimmered like polished sapphire, reflecting the firelight with an eerie glow. Tiny wings, leathery and trembling, tucked against its sides. A tail lashed weakly across the ash. Its eyes round, liquid silver locked onto hers with desperate intensity. A dragon. Claire's breath caught. Her rational mind screamed impossible. But the soldier in her knew one thing. The creature was alive. Wounded and afraid, daughter choked. Again. Softer this time. Not a roar, not a growl, a plea. Without realizing, she knelt, training whispered. Approach like it's a wounded animal. Don't spook it, stay calm. She removed her glove and extended a hand. Fingers steady despite the quake in her chest. The little dragon lifted its head. For one eternal second, the desert fell silent. Then it pressed its snout against her palm. Heat surged through her, but not the searing burn of fire. It was warmth, deep and steady, like the pulse of life itself. Behind her, a teammate yelled, "Donovan, what the hell are you doing?" She ignored them. The dragon dragged itself forward, curling against her chest, its tiny claws hooked into her vest. Not telling, just holding, and in that instant Claire understood. It had chosen her. The fire roared closer, snapping her back. She scooped the creature into her arms and ran, her lungs burning with smoke, her boots pounding dirt. Her squad stared, eyes wide. But no one dared stop her. Hours later, when the blaze was finally under control, Claire sat alone outside the base camp. The little dragon lay across her lap, chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Its scales still glowed faintly, like embers refusing to die. She touched its wings gently. Torn membranes, smoke damage, malnourished. She'd patched up soldiers in worse shape, but never anything like this. Her squad avoided her now. Whispering in the shadows, some thought she'd lost her mind. Others swore they'd seen the creature but refused to speak of it. Claire didn't care. She kept her eyes on the little dragon. It wasn't fear that filled her chest, it was something else, a strange, fragile bond. When the creature stirred, it opened those silver eyes again and gazed up at her, not with the wild panic of an animal. With recognition, she exhaled. "You're not letting me go." "Huh." The dragon gave a soft chirp, pressing closer. She smiled for the first time in months. "All right then, guess you're stuck with me." The next day's blood into secrecy. Claire hid the dragon in her quarters, feeding it scraps and water. She named it Ember Dot at first. Ember barely moved, only curling against the heater or her chest. But each day it grew stronger. Within 3 nights, its wings stretched wider. The scales along its back hardened to steel blue ridges. Its small body radiated warmth like a living furnace. Claire noticed something else. Ember wasn't just surviving, it was bonding. It followed her gaze, mirrored her emotions. When nightmares jolted her awake, Ember climbed onto her shoulder, pressing its warm body against her neck until her trembling stopped. For the first time in years, Claire slept without her pistol under her pillow. But secrets had sharp edges. By the end of the week, unmarked SUVs rolled into camp. Men in black suits, eyes hidden behind tinted glasses, asked pointed questions. They weren't fire investigators. They weren't military brass. They were hunting something, and Claire already knew what. She kept her face neutral, answering with soldier-trained precision. But when she returned to her room that night, Ember was waiting on her cot, wings twitching nervously as if it sensed the danger too. Claire sat down, running her hand along its scales. "They can't know about you." Ember nuzzled her palm, letting out a tiny huff of smoke. She closed her eyes. In that warmth, she felt something she hadn't in years: purpose. She wasn't just a soldier anymore. She was a guardian. But deep down, Claire knew the truth. She couldn't hide them forever. And when the world discovered that dragons were real, everything would change. Claire Donovan had kept secrets before. She'd hidden wounds from her squad, locked away nightmares behind a mask of steel discipline, and buried parts of herself that no one, not even her closest brothers-in-arms, ever saw. But hiding, Ember was different. This wasn't a scar or a memory. This was alive, breathing, growing. And if anyone found out, it would be taken away. The second week after the wildfire, the camp shifted. Soldiers were restless, whispering about the men in black who showed up in unmarked SUVs. They weren't military, not officially, but they had the kind of authority that silenced even colonels. They interviewed everyone who had been near the blaze. They asked about strange lights, strange sounds, unidentified fauna. Their language was clinical, rehearsed. Claire kept her answer short. She was a soldier. She knew how to look them in the eye and give them nothing. But that night, when she returned to her quarters, Ember was waiting, wings unfurled wider than before, scales glistening in the dim light like whetstone. The little dragon's silver eyes followed her every move, and when she closed the door, it scrambled up her arm to perch on her shoulder. "Easy, buddy," Claire murmured, stroking its neck. "We've got company out there," Ember huffed, a puff of smoke curling from its nostrils. Claire froze. Smoke wasn't new, but this was thicker, hotter, tinged with faint sparks. "You've been holding out on me," she whispered. The discovery came 2 nights later. Claire sat awake, cleaning her sidearm by the dim lamp on her desk. Ember dozed nearby, its small chest rising and falling with faint rumbling snores. Then, without warning, the dragon jerked upright. Its scales bristled. A second later, the power flickered out. The base fell into blackness. Generators stalled. Somewhere outside, a soldier cursed. Claire instinctively reached for her rifle, but Ember leapt to the floor, wings spreading, eyes glowing like molten silver. Its throat glimmered with orange light. And before Claire could even comprehend, the little dragon exhaled. A narrow stream of fire arced across the room, igniting a trash can in the corner. Jesus Christ. Claire scrambled to smother it with her jacket. Hard hammering. Smoke filled the room again. But this time not from Ember's tiny huffs. When the flames were out, Claire turned to the dragon. It blinked at her innocently, as if it hadn't just Breathed actual fire. Claire dropped to her knees, hands gripping her hair. "You are not just real. You're dangerous." Ember tilted its head, then hopped forward and pressed its warm snout against her knee. Her breath steadied. Dangerous, yes, but it hadn't burned her. It hadn't attacked. It had protected. She realized then Ember hadn't fired randomly. It had reacted to the blackout, the sudden silence, the invisible tension. It had thought they were under threat. Ember wasn't just a creature. It was a soldier, in its own way, and it had chosen her. The following morning, the men in black doubled their patrols. Claire noticed them near her quarters more often. One lingered too long outside her door. Inside, Ember prowled restlessly. It was getting harder to keep the dragon hidden. Its wingspan had nearly doubled in just a week. The cot creaked when it perched. Its chirps, once soft, now echoed like small growls. Claire leaned against the wall, rubbing her temple. She thought of reporting it, handing him over, letting the government deal with the impossible. That's what a good soldier would do. But the thought of Ember locked in some lab, dissected under fluorescent lights, turned her stomach. No, she couldn't do that. Not after it had trusted her. Not after it had made her feel alive again. The break came at dusk. Claire was in the motor pool, checking equipment, when the alarm sounded. It wasn't a drill. The outer perimeter had been breached. By the time she reached her quarters, 2 men in black were already inside, and Ember was cornered. The dragon hissed, wings flared, eyes blazing like molten steel. One agent raised a weapon tranquilizer. Maybe. Claire didn't wait to find out. "Stand down," she barked, storming in. Her voice carried the weight of command, ears drilled into her lungs. The men hesitated. One turned. "Sergeant Donovan, step aside. That's classified property." Property? Claire's pulse thundered. Ember growled, smoke seeping from its jaws. The agent raised his weapon again. And then Ember moved. A burst of fire shot across the room, scorching the wall, inches from the agent's head. He stumbled back, cursing. Claire threw herself between them, arms outstretched. "Back off," she shouted. For a tense second, no one moved. Ember hissed low, silver eyes locked on the strangers. Finally, the men lowered their weapons. One sneered. "This isn't over." They left, slamming the door behind them. Claire turned, her heart still pounding. Ember pressed against her leg, trembling. She knelt, gathering it into her arms. "You just painted a target on both of us," she whispered. Ember buried its head into her chest, warm and fragile, and in that moment, Claire knew 2 things. 1, she couldn't stay at the base anymore. 2, she would burn the whole damn world down before she let anyone take Ember away. That night, under the cover of darkness, Claire packed her gear, rations, water, her sidearm, a map. Ember perched on her shoulder, silent but alert. As she stepped beyond the gates, slipping into the endless desert, she glanced back at the base one last time. Her old life was over. Ahead, the unknown waited, and beside her, a dragon, the last of its kind. Maybe the first chose her path with a flick of its tail. Together, they disappeared into the night. The desert was silent at night. To silent, Claire Donovan had learned long ago that silence wasn't peace. Silence was the moment before chaos struck. Her boots crunched on gravel as she trekked deeper into the barren landscape. Ember perched on her shoulder like a glowing guardian. The baby dragon's scales shimmered faintly, casting a pale light that brushed against the sand. It had been 3 days since she walked away from the base. 3 days of evasion, stolen rations, and sleepless nights. She knew the men in black wouldn't let her slip away, not with Ember in her care. And she was right. Helicopters had swept the skies the night before. She'd heard the hum of drones overhead, their red eyes scanning the desert. Twice she'd hidden under jagged rocks, pressing Ember against her chest, whispering for it to stay quiet. Each time, the dragon had obeyed, trembling but silent. "Good boy," she murmured now, reaching up to scratch the underside of Ember's jaw. The little dragon purred, a low rumble like a tiny furnace. But Claire's mind was restless. Every step deeper into the desert was a step away from everything she knew: her career, her squad, her country. She wasn't just a WOL. She was a fugitive, and yet she didn't regret it. Not when Ember leaned into her touch with such unshakable trust. On the fourth day, she reached a small town at the edge of nowhere. Dusty gas stations, shuttered shops. A bar with a flickering neon sign. Claire pulled her hood low, slipping inside the bar for food. Ember was hidden in a rucksack. Though the bag shifted occasionally when the dragon grew restless, she ordered a sandwich and coffee, sitting in the back corner where she could see the door. Old habits, but halfway through her meal, the hairs on her neck prickled. Soldiers called it combat sense, civilians called it paranoia. Either way, it had saved her life too many times to ignore. Two men entered, suits, sunglasses at night. They scanned the room with calculated patience. Claire lowered her head, tightening her grip on the bag at her side. Ember stirred inside, sensing her tension. The men spoke briefly with the bartender, then split up. One checked the restrooms. The other drifted toward her corner. Claire's pulse thundered. She forced herself to chew slowly, finishing her sandwich like nothing was wrong. But her free hand slipped into the rucksack. Fingers brushing Ember's scales, the dragon pressed back, as if saying, "I'm here." The man was 2 tables away when Ember made a sound. A soft chirp, muffled but unmistakable. The agent's head snapped toward her. His hand went to his jacket where the bulge of a concealed weapon waited. Claire didn't hesitate. She flipped the table. Food scattering and shoved through the emergency exit. Alarm screamed. Ember burst from the rucksack, wings snapping open. Outside, the desert air hit her like a blast furnace. She sprinted toward the alley, Ember soaring clumsily above her head. Behind them, shouts erupted. Boots. Hounded daughter shot rang out. The bullet missed, but Ember shrieked, fire flaring from its jaws. A stream of flame seared across the alley, forcing the agents to dive for cover. "Go, Ember, higher," Claire shouted. The dragon struggled, wings beating hard, but lifted just enough to follow as she darted across the darkened street. Together, they vanished into the sprawl of abandoned trailers on the edge of town. Hours later, under the cover of a rusted-out RV, Claire caught her breath. Ember nestled against her, scales still glowing faintly from the fire it had unleashed. "You saved my ass," she whispered, running a hand down its back. "But you can't keep doing that. They'll track us faster if you light up half the damn desert." Ember tilted its head, chirping softly. Its silver eyes caught the moonlight, glowing with an intelligence that made Claire pause. "You understood that, didn't you?" she murmured. The dragon blinked once, slow and deliberate. Claire leaned back against the heavy wall, exhaling hard. "Christ, you are not just learning, you're listening." That realization shook her more than any gunfight. Ember wasn't just an animal reacting to instinct. It was adapting, understanding, choosing. By dawn, Claire pushed them farther, into the wastelands. Every shadow felt like ice. Every drone overhead sent her heart hammering. But Ember was restless too, wings twitching, tail lashing around noon, as they crossed a rocky ridge. Ember suddenly froze. It growled low, a sound Claire had never heard before. "What is it?" she whispered, crouching, the dragon's gaze locked on the horizon. Claire followed Dan, saw a black SUV kicking up dust, speeding straight toward them. Damn it. She grabbed her rifle, scanning for cover. There was none, just rocks and sand. The SUV skidded to a stop 50 yards away. From men spilled out. Rifles raised. Claire raised her weapon, teeth clenched, outnumbered, outgunned. But she'd die before handing Ember over. Then Ember moved. The dragon leapt from her shoulder, wings spreading wide. For a heartbeat, Claire thought it would run. Instead, Ember hovered above her, eyes blazing white-hot. Its throat glowed like molten steel, and then it roared. Not a chirp, not a growl. A true roar, small but fierce, shaking the air. A wave of heat exploded outward. The ground beneath the SUV cracked, glowing red. The men staggered back, shouting, rifles slipping from their hands as flames licked up their boots. Claire stared, stunned. Ember wasn't just growing, it was evolving. Its power was no longer small bursts, it was elemental. The men scrambled back into the SUV, tires screeching as they sped away. Ember dropped back onto Claire's shoulder, exhausted but proud. It chirped once, nuzzling her cheek. Claire swallowed hard, lowering her rifle. "You're not just a dragon," her voice trembled. "You're a weapon." But as Ember nestled against her, seeking comfort like a child, she shook her head. "No," she whispered fiercely, "you're mine, and I'll make sure they never turn you into anything else." She scanned the horizon. The desert stretched endlessly, unforgiving. The government would never stop hunting them. But for the first time, Claire wasn't afraid. She had a purpose. She had a partner, and together, they were unstoppable. Amelia had built her days round Draco. Each morning she fed him, trained him, and tried to teach him control over the sparks that now flickered constantly between his sharp little teeth at night. She bundled him in blankets to muffle the glow of his scales and lull him to sleep. But Draco was no longer a helpless hatchling. He was growing fast, too fast. His wings stretched wider each day, the ridges of his back harder, his eyes sharper. And when he got excited, bursts of fire leapt from his mouth without warning. Once, he set Amelia's curtains ablaze. Another time he melted the metal latch of her window. She had turned her room into a kind of emergency fire station, with buckets of water lined against the wall and wet cloths ready at a moment's notice. Still, Amelia was amazed. Draco was learning. He listened to her voice, followed her gestures, even mimicked her laughter in low rumbling growls, and though the danger was undeniable, she couldn't ignore the bond between them. One evening, strange lights lit up the northern sky. The whole town whispered about it. Some said it was an aurora. Others swore it was military testing. But Amelia knew better. During her brief service years ago, she had once read about these lights. They weren't natural phenomena. They were signals, dragons flying high above the clouds, leaving their marks of fire and energy across the night. When Draco saw the glowing streaks, his body trembled. His wings stretched as far as they could, his tiny chest heaving as though something ancient was calling him. "They're out there, aren't they?" Amelia whispered. Draco gave a low, guttural rumble. His scales shimmered brighter than ever. Keeping him hidden was becoming impossible. The townsfolk had already noticed the strange noises from her home. If anyone saw Draco by accident, it wouldn't just endanger him, it would destroy Amelia's life too. That night, she made her choice. She would train him properly. She would teach him to fly, far away from prying eyes. At dawn, Amelia wrapped Draco in her cloak and slipped out to the edge of the forest. The deeper she walked, the more the noise of the town disappeared, until it was just her, Draco, and the whisper of the wind through the trees. "All right, little one," she said, setting him down on the grass. "Let's see what those wings can do." Draco blinked up at her, nervous but eager. He spread his wings, flapped once, twice, and tumbled forward in a clumsy heap. Amelia laughed softly and picked him up, brushing the dirt off his scales. Again and again he tried jumping, flapping, falling. But Amelia never scolded him. She encouraged him, steady as a drumbeat, until finally Draco caught the air for a few glorious seconds. He soared. His small body hovered above the ground, wings slicing the sunlight. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. But the moment shattered as a shadow moved between the trees. A tall figure stepped into the clearing. He wore a long black cloak, hood drawn low, but Amelia saw the gleam of pale eyes fixed on them. His voice was low and heavy when he spoke. "So it's true," he said. "A human is hiding a dragon." Draco darted behind Amelia, his scales bristling. Her hand twitched toward the knife strapped under her coat, but her body felt frozen. The stranger stepped closer, calm and deliberate, like he had all the time in the world. "Give it to me," he said, "or you'll both burn." Draco hissed, a thin ribbon of fire slipping past his teeth. Amelia clenched her fists. Whatever this man was, he wasn't just a passerby. He had come for Draco, and Amelia knew. In that moment, their story was no longer just about survival. It was about war. The air in the clearing thickened. Amelia could feel the weight of the man's presence pressing down like a storm before the lightning. His hood cast deep shadows across his face. But those pale eyes glowed unnaturally, catching every flicker of Draco's fiery scales. "Step aside," the man said again, his voice sharper now, laced with authority. "That creature is not yours to keep. You've no idea what you're sheltering." Amelia planted her boots firmly in the dirt, her body forming a shield between Draco and the stranger. "He's not a creature," she said, her voice steady, even though her heart hammered in her chest. "He's a child, and he's mine." The man chuckled darkly. "Child. That hatchling belongs to an ancient line. His blood carries the power to burn cities to ash. He was never meant to stay by your side." Draco hissed again, this time louder, wings twitching with instinct. A thin ribbon of smoke curled from his nostrils, and Amelia felt his body press closer to her legs. He was frightened, but there was something else there to anger. "Who are you?" Amelia demanded. The man lifted his hood slowly, revealing a face etched with old scars. His hair was silver, though his body looked strong, and along the sides of his neck ran faint marks, like scales pressed beneath human skin. "My name," he said, "is Kale. I am Dragonborn." The words rang in Amelia's mind like thunder. She had heard that name before, in half-buried legends from her military days. Dragonborn was said to be the remnants of a forgotten order humans who bound their blood with dragonfire generations ago. Some worshipped dragons, some enslaved them, but all were dangerous. "You're lying," Amelia said, though her voice trembled. Kel's lips curved into a cold smile. "Am I? Look closely, soldier. Don't you feel the heat of my blood?" To prove it, he raised one bare hand. A spark ignited across his palm, glowing like liquid fire. The flame curled and danced, alive. Yet he showed no pain. Draco snarled, and for the first time Amelia felt him push past her, stepping forward on trembling legs, his wings spread wide, his scales burning hot. He wasn't big enough to fight Kale, not yet, but Amelia could see the defiance blazing in his eyes. Kale lowered his hand, the fire vanishing. "That hatchling's instincts are correct," he said. "He recognizes me, and soon he will follow me over my dead body." Amelia snapped. Kale tilted his head, studying her with a mixture of amusement and pity. "You're strong. I'll give you that. But do you truly think you can?" Raise him when his fire grows too great, when his hunger for the skies becomes unbearable. What then? He will turn, Amelia. Dragons always turn, for a heartbeat. Doubt stabbed her. She had seen Draco struggle already, the accidental fires, the restless energy in his wings, the way he trembled at the sight of the lights in the sky. Was Kale right? Was she only delaying the inevitable? But then Draco pressed against her leg again, his small claws gripping her boot. He looked up at her with those bright, ember-colored eyes trusting, loyal, unbreakable. No, she whispered, the word firm. He's different. We're different. Kel's pale eyes narrowed. The smile faded. Then you've made your choice. He raised both hands now, and fire roared to life between them. Spiraling outward like a living serpent, the tree shuddered. As heat blasted through the clearing, the grass at Amelia's feet curling black, Amelia yanked her knife free and stood ready. She had no illusions. Steel against fire was foolish. But she wasn't about to give Draco up. Not now. Not ever. Draco let out a piercing screech, his wings flaring bright as molten metal. Without warning, he leapt forward, his body igniting in a burst of flame. For the first time, he wasn't clumsy. Wasn't afraid. He was powerful, blazing, alive. He shot into the air, circling above Amelia and Kale, leaving a trail of sparks across the sky. Kale's eyes widened, his voice a growl of awe and rage. Impossible. He's too young. But Draco dove, a comet of fire, aimed straight at Kale. The man raised his arms to shield himself, flames crashing against flames. The clearing exploding in heat and smoke. Amelia staggered back, shielding her face, barely able to breathe. The forest lit up as if the sun had crashed down to earth. And in that chaos, she understood something she hadn't before. Draco wasn't just learning, he was choosing. He was choosing her. When the flames cleared, Kale stood blackened and furious, his cloak half burned, his face twisted in rage. Draco landed clumsily beside Amelia, smoke still rising from his scales. This isn't over. Kale spat, retreating into the trees. His voice echoed as he vanished. The Dragon Council will come for him. And when they do, no human bond will save you. Silence fell. The forest was scorched, the grass smoking. Amelia dropped to her knees, pulling Draco into her arms. He was trembling, exhausted, but alive. She held him close, her heart pounding. The danger was real now. Kale had revealed something terrifying. There were more like him, and they would come. But Amelia's fear was drowned out by pride. Draco had fought for her. He had chosen her over his own kind, and that meant their story was only just beginning. The forest smoldered long after Kale had vanished. Blackened trees leaned like skeletons in the clearing, their branches cracked and broken. The air still heavy with the metallic sting of burned earth. Amelia crouched beside Draco, one hand resting against his warm scales, the other gripping her knife, though she knew the immediate danger had passed. Draco's body shuddered against her palm. He was panting, smoke curling from his nostrils, his tiny chest rising and falling as though he had sprinted for miles. The firestorm he had unleashed had drained him nearly to the point of collapse. Yet, when his eyes lifted to meet hers, they burned with something fierce: loyalty, defiance, and a strange sort of pride. "You saved me," Amelia whispered. Her voice was soft, trembling not from fear but from awe. You fought for me." Draco let out a low, rumbling sound. Like a cat's purr made of thunder, he curled closer, pressing his warm body into her chest. Amelia wrapped her arms round him, holding him tight as if her embrace alone could shield him from the world that now hunted them. But Kel's words gnawed at her. The Dragon Council will come for him. The name echoed in her skull, sparking old fragments of memory. During her time in the service, Amelia had been stationed in remote outposts across Eastern Europe, where whispers of strange sightings dragons in the night sky. Villages set aflame were dismissed as myth, yet she remembered the briefings. The classified files she wasn't supposed to read but did anyway. The Dragon Council, a secretive order said to control the fate of dragonkind. And now, they were coming for Draco. Amelia rose to her feet, forcing her thoughts into order, standing here, broken and exposed. Wasn't an option. She needed shelter. She needed answers. She needed to make Draco strong enough to survive whatever was coming. "Come on, little guy," she said, sliding Draco into the worn canvas satchel she had modified for carrying him. He fit snugly, his wings tucked against his body, his head poking out just enough to watch the world. "We've got work to do." They traveled deeper into the mountains over the next several days. Amelia moved with the precision of her old soldier training, scouting the terrain, avoiding open roads, hiding from any sign of life. She rationed her supplies, shared scraps of dried meat with Draco, and collected water from streams. Each night, she built a small fire, careful to shield it with rocks so its glow wouldn't betray them. Draco, still young, tried to mimic her by breathing tiny bursts of flame, his attempts clumsy but growing steadier. Once, he sneezed and accidentally scorched Amelia's boot, leaving a charred hole. She scolded him, but her laughter quickly followed. "Guess we'll work on him next," she teased, scratching his chin. His scales hummed with warmth under her touch, but not everything was playful. Sometimes, Draco would awaken in the dead of night, eyes glowing, wings twitching as if something unseen called to him. He would cry out with a strange, haunting screech, his voice echoing across the mountains until Amelia calmed him. She began to suspect it wasn't just nightmares, it was instinct. Perhaps the Council's blood bond, perhaps some primal call. He didn't understand, and each time she whispered the same words into his ear. "You're mine, Draco, not theirs. We choose our path." By the end of the first week, Amelia stumbled upon a cave high in the cliffs, a shelter hidden by jagged stone. Overlooking the valley below, it was perfect. She cleared the space, set traps at the entrance, and prepared it to be their base. Here, their training began. Amelia knew raising a dragon wasn't just about survival. Draco needed discipline, strength, and control, or Kel's prophecy might come true. She began with simple exercises, teaching Draco to flare his wings without tumbling, to leap from one rock to another without crashing, to exhale flame in short bursts instead of uncontrolled streams. At first, it was chaos. Draco singed his own tail more than once, and Amelia nearly lost her eyebrows. But slowly, she began to see progress. His wings grew steadier, his fire more precise, his body stronger. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, Amelia stood in the clearing outside their cave. "All right, partner," she said, holding up a leather target she had stitched together. "One clean shot. You can do this." Draco crouched low, his eyes locked on the target, his chest expanded, smoke curling from his nostrils. With a sharp exhale, he spat a jet of firebright, controlled, hitting dead center. Amelia whooped and pumped her fist. "Yes, that's it. That's my boy," Draco squealed with delight, flapping his wings until he nearly knocked himself over. Amelia scooped him up, hugging him tightly. For a moment, the world felt safe, even joyful. But safety never lasted long. The first sign of trouble came 3 nights later. Amelia woke to a strange glow outside the cave. She crept to the entrance, knife in hand, Draco at her side. Down in the valley below, dozens of small fires burned, torches carried by figures moving in formation. Her stomach dropped. These weren't hikers. These weren't villagers. The way they moved, synchronized and silent, was military. And in the distance, above the torches, Amelia saw shapes gliding through the night sky. Dragons, full-grown, their wingspans blotting out the stars. The council had come. Amelia's blood ran cold. She crouched low, pressing Draco against her chest. His body trembled violently, a low whimper escaping his throat. "They're calling you," she whispered, realization slicing through her like a knife. "That's why you couldn't sleep. You felt them," Draco whimpered again, torn between the instinct to answer and the bond that tied him to her. Amelia's grip tightened. "Don't listen," she hissed. "You're mine, Draco. You're mine." But deep down, she knew the truth. If the council had found them this easily, their time in hiding was over. The fires in the valley spread wider, forming a ring. The dragons above circled lower, their glowing eyes scanning the cliffs. Amelia turned back into the cave, heart hammering. She had fought armies before, but this was something else. She wasn't just a soldier anymore. She was a mother protecting her child. And no matter the cost, she would not let them take him.